So we're going to go through a year in review, as I always do every year, and it's actually quite fun to be able to do that. And as I said, with the deputy being up here, I'm going to take a few more liberties than I know he could, and I'm going to tell you what I think is going to happen. And I've got my watch out here also to time myself, because I do want to try and provide you with a little bit of Q&A time, because every year you tell me there's not enough time to ask questions, not enough time to take comments. So I'm going to try. Won't guarantee it, but I'm going to try. So 2011, great year for your federation, and what I always like to do is start off by talking to you about what others, or reminding you what others say about OFAH, because you hear it and you see it in the media. And I'm going to particularly focus on things around the long gun registry this year. And we had a letter to the editor in the Mid-North Monitor, which said, the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters has stated the hypocrisy on the part of both the NDP and the Liberals in this debate is staggering, and they went on to say true in spades. And the Windsor Star, which produced an editorial on the long gun registry. One of the groups that has consistently campaigned against the registry is the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters. And they went on to use a quote from the news release that we put out. So that was good. Good exposure for us. And they're right. We are one of those groups since the mid-90s that have campaigned and never lost sight of the fact that the long gun registry should be abolished. This was an interesting one, and I actually think this one works into 2012, because this is our good friend, I hope Charlie's watching, from Northern Ontario. This is our good friend, MP Charlie Angus from Timmins, James Bay. Charlie is one of the NDP MPs that has been back and forth on this issue, back and forth over the last 3 years. He may have landed now. Now that he knows he can't win, he may have landed. But anyway, Charlie said recently, and I think that members should be offended at what Charlie said. Charlie said the gun lobby is not going to stop. So he refers to hunters in his own riding as the gun lobby. Can you imagine? He goes on to say, I've dealt with them. These guys are fanatics on guns. So I think the message to the backbenchers is, yeah, we're going to go for stripping the licensing as far as possible. That's coming. But even though Charlie flip-flopped, he got elected again. So that's the democracy we live in. What others say? The International Coalition for Women in Shooting and Hunting issued a press release, and they said, the International Coalition for Women in Shooting and Hunting thanks the Conservative government for keeping their promise to eliminate the wasteful long gun registry. Finally, Parliament has seen fit to eliminate what was essentially a taxpayer-funded list of legally owned, low-risk guns, which has done nothing to help women who are suffering in violent relationships. Couldn't have said it better ourselves. So I want to start out this morning by talking about OFH programs, and you heard our Deputy Minister refer to a few of them. And I change it around each year. I switch around a little bit of the presentation on what I start with and what I end with. But most importantly is the Invading Species Awareness Program, which is one of our significant undertakings and has been for a number of years. We've got tremendous partners, and the original partnership started in 1992. I remind you of this every year because I want you to be reminded of the genesis of this program. The modern-day agreement has been in place since 2002, when Premier Eves visited Hamilton, and a couple of days prior to that visit, we ironed out an agreement that Premier Eves would stand up at the podium and challenge the OFAH with some money. And I love it when government challenges us with giving us money. But what he said was, we'll give you $200,000, we'll enter a partnership with the OFAH if you will match it. And let's start working on good messaging to the public, the community at large, Ontarians about invasive species. That's when the modern-day agreement kicked in. And it's been in place ever since. What does the program do? It engages Ontarians in the prevention of the spread of invasive species. It talks about the collaboration we have with hundreds of community groups, non-government organizations, and all levels of government, and you're going to see that. Early detection and rapid response initiatives for invasive species such as, you've heard a question today about Asian carp, giant hogweed, European water chestnut, and water soldier are part of the program. We've made significant contributions to provincial, national, and international initiatives, including the Ontario Invasive Plant Council. I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. The U.S. Great Lakes Panel on Aquatic Nuisance Species, the Canadian Aquatic Invasive Species Network, and the list goes on and on. So we're active on the front of providing information and making contributions to documents that are going to help our fight against invasive species. Our communication strategy worked well over 2011. We had about 80 media promotional contacts that we are aware of. We had newsprint and web, radio, and television, and those combined reached about 3 million people with a message about invasive species. We reached a broad audience, and of course you know we reach angler and hunters. We reach anglers and hunters through our own communications, but we also reach rec boaters, gardeners, ATV operators, aquarium hobbyists, and you see the list of people that we work with there. Staff attended more than 220 events. There you see a list of them, like the Toronto Sportsman Show that's on right now, the International Boat Show, shows like Canada Blooms, Landscape Ontario Congress. So we're very active on all fronts in educating Ontarians about invasive species, and those shows combined reach about 300,000 people. Education and outreach for Lake Superior and the North Shore was a program that was very well received by both the public and the partners. That was a staff person positioned in Thunder Bay. It was in partnership with M&R, community-based social marketing project for Lake Simcoe, was also implemented in a partnership with M&R. And we had 3 boat launch locations which were set up on Lake Simcoe where our staff actually were there engaging the public as they used the launches in an invasive species outreach program. Over 850 calls in 2011 to the Invading Species Hotline to report sightings, requesting materials, or just to seek more information about invasive species. And the staff responded to over 350 requests, resulting in the distribution of 320,000 pieces of educational material. And we received over 485 sighting reports of invasive species last year. We delivered 10 aquatic invasive species workshops. Those were for technical professionals and field technicians. Staff working to establish a volunteer-based invasive species early detection network for Ontario. And we had a hit squad that worked around the province, students, 21 of them, that covered 150 community events during the summer of 2011. We worked closely with our key partner, M&R, and the Ontario Invasive Plant Council to produce some new materials. One of the very important pieces of material that we produced last year was the brochure on Asian carp. We also did a Grow Me Instead guide for Southern Ontario, which talks about the plants that we would prefer people to grow in their gardens rather than get caught up in something that may be invasive. So it's very important. The WATCH program. Our WATCH program engages volunteers. And when I talk to you today about some of the programs OFH delivers, you're going to realize how important volunteers are to the organization. And I know that our counterparts at M&R know this. I mean, you heard the deputy talk about his role and his commitment to stewardship. Stewardship is about volunteers. It's about leveraging money, leveraging volunteer hours. And we have volunteers engaged in this program, 120 lakes in 2011, and they contributed vital information on things such as the presence or the absence of things like zebra mussels or spiny water flea. We had 3 what we called invasive species road rallies in 2011. The rallies resulted in hundreds of invasive plant sightings recorded in our database, because we have a significant database, and over 325 invasive species boat launch signs were distributed. And you will see those signs across the province. I'm sure many of you have seen signs when you've launched a boat somewhere with respect to invasive species. And partnerships. I can't talk enough about partnerships because I think the success of the OFH is as a result of its work on partnering, on making sure that we all can gather together to deliver a program which can be nothing but successful. And we have great partners in this program, our government programs. We have federal partners, Fisheries Canada, Environment Canada, Service Canada. We did some work with the Lake Simcoe Cleanup Fund money. But our partners go on, and when you see the list, I'm proud to say the list is more extensive every year because more people know that these programs are important. And more people know, and I'm going to start throwing this word around here this morning, I think I did it last year too, and Leslie will know what the word is relevant. The more partners we get involved in the program, and the more people understand how important these things are, the more relevant we are as anglers and hunters and as a community doing good work to people in Ontario. They recognize the name, they recognize the brand, and they understand that we do more than fish and hunt. We care about fish and wildlife conservation. to the benefit of people in Ontario, all peoples of Ontario, just like the mandate of our Ministry of Natural Resources. Conservation authorities, you heard them mentioned this morning, key partners in the program. So our invasive species program is alive and well. We're ending a 5-year agreement, and we're hopeful that we will have a new 5-year agreement. At minimum, under the circumstances of budget deliberations, we're hopeful that we will, at the very least, be speaking to the Minister's office over the next couple of weeks and having a 1-year extension on the current arrangement so Angelo and staff can sit down at the table and hammer out what this agreement looks like. This agreement to date is about $300,000 on both sides of the ledger. The province invests $300,000, we develop a work plan of things they need to be delivered for invasive species, and we contribute more than $300,000 of OFAH funds to deliver the program. So it is a true partnership. Bring back the salmon program. Lake Ontario's gem, the Atlantic salmon. In 2011, we were able to attract a brand new lead sponsor in Ontario Power Generation. We're pleased with that. LCBO continues to support the Phase 2 5-year program. And Banrock stayed on for 1 more year. I doubt if Banrock is in after this year. We're talking to some other people, and we always are. But for the most part, Banrock got us where we are today. They were the lead partner for the first 5 years, and we thank them for that. Fish production and stocking. I know that Bill mentioned yesterday that he was part of the release of the 3 millionth salmon. And there you see in the background a photo of then Minister Jeffrey. Bill having a big grin on his face as we were there, celebrating with many, many partners, LCBO, Ministry of Natural Resources, and Ontario Power Generation. So over the course of 2011, about 100,000 yearlings were stocked. About 550,000 fry were stocked, with about 40% going into the credit, and that's where that photo was taken. We had the balance of our fish delivered to the Humber, Duffins, and Cobourg Brook. The spring of 2011 was the first year for stocking the Humber River. Remember, I've told you in the past that we have certain streams coming online as we go forward with the project. They chose the first 3 streams with the best possible chance of success. Now we're moving on to other tributaries, so the Humber came online for the first time. Approximately 2,000 fry were stocked into Cobourg, actually by 13 journalists who actually were touring Lake Ontario at the time. So of course, being the OFH, we took advantage of that, had it help us so that we could get some editorial content as a result of their visit to Ontario. And in September, all 3 strains of the 3-year-old broodstock were implanted with microchips. In October and November, 187,000 fall fingerlings were stocked. Almost 2.9 million green eggs are expected to be collected from the 3 strains, and there's your 3 strains we're working with right now. Le Havre River, Sebago Lake, and Lac Saint-Jean broodstocks. And where those fish are raised, Normandale, Sir Sanford Fleming College, which we have a new agreement with for the next 5 years, Harwood, Islington Sportsman's Club, and Bell Fountain Hatchery. The combined production targets are 696,000 fry, 190,000 fall fingerlings, and 90,000 yearlings for the coming year. And I can make a comment about Sir Sanford Fleming. Nobody rears better yearlings than Sir Sanford Fleming. They're absolutely giants when they come out of that facility. And you know, the advantages of some of these things are we've got an agreement now with Sir Sanford. So we've got students in a fish and wildlife program in a school designed to teach fish and wildlife natural resource management who are helping with such a great program like the Atlantic Salmon Restoration Project. Can't get any better than that. Research and assessment, a large number of Atlantics were observed in the credit, smolt size. For the 3rd straight year, wild Atlantic salmon have been observed in New York's Salmon River. And significant numbers of salmon are being caught on the south side of the lake. It tells us that our program is successful. It tells us, for me, that fish are moving around the lake. They're cycling around the lake like other salmon species within the lake. And right now it tells me that I should be fishing on the New York side. Education and outreach, an important part of the program. There you see Chris Robinson, our program coordinator there with Classroom, releasing their fish, and that draws me to the Classroom Hatchery program, which we're very proud of. From Fort Erie to Kingston, all units were upgraded with better chiller systems to be able to care for the fish more appropriately, and the fish are released by our students in May or June of each year. And we have great partners, the Toronto Zoo, Let's Talk Science out of McMaster, of course our own ministry, Ontario Streams, and the Species at Risk Stewardship Fund last year. Water quality and protection, or habitat work in other words, is also a component of this program. So when I talk to people on the phone and they ask me, what is this program about? I can talk about 6 or 7 different things that are of some value as we restore Atlantic salmon to Lake Ontario, and this is a significant one. 23 projects with the help of 639 volunteers again, 1,200 plus volunteer hours put in. We planted over 2,400 trees, 8,800 shrubs, restored over 37,000 square meters of stream shoreline, which benefit much more than Atlantic salmon, and we know that. And again, our partnerships. Very proud of our partnerships. You can see them there. Of course, OPG on as the lead sponsor for 5 years. They're doing some other work with the Federation, which I'll get to. But all of these partners are important. I'm not doing service to these partners because I have to skip over the slides quickly. But what I want to make sure you do as we're there is for people at home or people here, make sure you get a copy of the annual report. This is where you're going to get all the detail. And if you're at home and you want a copy, please contact head office if you want the detail, and we actually post it online after we're done the event. Partners again, all people wanting to be involved in the program, all people wanting this project to be a success, and all these people and companies willing to risk an investment in making a difference. And again, slides and slides of them. I mentioned the Ontario Invasive Plant Council provides a coordinated and effective provincial response to the threat of just invasive plants. And in 2010, the Council finalized its terms of reference and strategic plan, and they are going to become an incorporated entity. There is a fundraising committee set up to look at establishing long-range funding for the program, and I talked about the successful Grow Me Instead campaign, which was launched. They also did landowner workshops. They had some input on provincial and federal documents, and developed a document on best management practices. Community Stream Steward Program. Making a difference one stream at a time. Very successful program with 75 site visits over the course of the year. Staff attended 81 festivals, shows, events. 45 projects were completed to protect enhanced streams and wetlands. Things like, again, tree and shrub planting, livestock exclusion, bank stabilization. 3 major bank stabilization projects along Pefferlaw River near the mouth of Lake Simcoe. And those are sites that would have had eroding banks, wood break walls, et cetera, et cetera. They were all replaced, and now we're using them as a demonstration site to show people in the area what a site could look like and what they could do as far as remedial work if they're along the Pefferlaw River or somewhere else that needs that work. With appropriate permits, we can make a difference. And our outreach, farm stewardship projects are important, and we implemented one with the help of Kawartha Farm Stewardship Collaboration. 40 projects at a value of over $450,000 were completed in 2011. And again, partners. Partners, 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 all making these programs more relevant than if OFH was to try to go it alone. Or the Government of Ontario, or our Ministry of Natural Resources were trying to do it alone. Fish and Wildlife Management. I mentioned to Christy, I don't know if she's still in the room because she's going to do a presentation this afternoon on moose, but I finally got away with a head office report where I didn't have 10 slides on moose because Christy's going to do a presentation here today and she's going to do a good job. So let's start off with talking just a little bit about it, but I'm not going to take any wind out of Christy's sails. Christy will do a good job and you'll be able to ask some questions of her this afternoon. But they have produced a new website which includes things like moose biology, M&R's moose management program, a hunter harvest information for the past 5 years, and draw tag information. We have provided some summary or preliminary recommendations for the new WMU moose population objectives, and Christy's going to give you a full update on what's happening on moose management in the province, so I hope you will all be able to get back and listen to her speak. Whitetail deer management. In most of southeastern Ontario, there was roughly a 30-40% increase in tag allocations from 2010 to 2011. And we were actually surprised at that. We thought they would be much more conservative. We thought that there would be less tags because it's our understanding that we have had 2 years of significantly reduced harvest. And when we went back to look at what happened over the past couple of years, we realized that the Southern Region Director did not engage OFAH and ask for input, and we weren't able to provide input in a timely fashion. in order to make suggestions on what might happen as a result of tag allocations. Now, we do have confidence in M&R bios and their professional judgment, and we hope to have more input in the coming years. But it's important for OFH to be sharing that information. It's important for M&R to realize that it shouldn't just be OFAH that needs to take the initiative. Our partners and our counterparts at M&R should be taking the initiative to engage our people also. Woodland caribou, just a little bit on it. We developed a document called the OFH Alternative Approach to Managing Woodland Caribou. That's the boreal population in Ontario. We have routinely expressed concerns regarding management of boreal caribou in Ontario. Our recommendations are intended to help prioritize and focus the woodland caribou management program in a way, as you would understand, optimizes conservation and the multitude of benefits of other natural resources. That's what we want to have happen as a result of that plan. Wild turkey hunting, we met with M&R staff with respect to wild turkey harvest information last November. We talked about things like the harvest results for the spring and fall. We talked about mandatory harvest reporting. We talked about the monitoring and assessment that goes on. And M&R had some concerns, I think, as well as we do, about the number of fall wild turkey licenses sales, and it's been declining. There's never been a lot anyway. It's still an opportunity. There's no impact on the population. There's not as much uptake as we had considered, but it is a great opportunity. And we hope that more people will take advantage of it. It's not a reason to suggest that we shouldn't have it, because people aren't taking advantage of it. Overall, the spring and fall wild turkey harvest totals are down again this year. At least we think they're down. But we may not have all the information, because both organizations are mutually concerned that there may be a lack of compliance. And Bill raised a good point this morning. I mean, you talk about how the tag situation is going to work with the new system, and we're concerned again about some people not complying with using a tag appropriately. We're concerned about a tag that could be used again. We're worried about our natural resources. We're worried about fish and wildlife management. So that's why we raise these concerns. But we'll continue to work with M&R. We'll continue to work on our own to educate hunters in the province that when it says mandatory reporting, it means mandatory reporting. We need to get your information. We need to get the data. There is a waterfowl advisory committee in Ontario of which OFH is a part. It also has people on the committee sitting from the Canadian Wildlife Service. And there's a number of things that they dealt with over the past year. Scott Petrie is irreplaceable on this committee. He does an absolutely wonderful job for this federation as a director at large, and very knowledgeable, as you know, Dr. Petrie is. And the CWS prepared and provided a very concise assessment on the feasibility of the reinstatement of a morning dove hunt in Ontario. So that's good news, because we've been talking about that for a number of years and trying to find some angles on how we would proceed. The assessment concluded that a hunt is biologically feasible. It's not a population issue, and a survey that was done suggested it would be supported by Ontario residents. So there's 2 boxes ticked off. We also, so there's discussions ongoing about that. We also had a submission that we put forward that would designate either a Saturday or Sunday before the regular opening of waterfowl hunt as Ontario Youth Waterfowl Heritage Day. That was also discussed, and there seems to be some support for the Saturday prior to the regular opening. And I know Scott mentioned this on Thursday during our annual general meeting, and of course the next extension is to look for some kind of a wild turkey youth hunt. But let's start with this. Next is the logical step for wild turkey. Well, we heard some good news on falconry today, and we knew that was happening. I said to Martin Galens, who can't wipe the smile off his face, who has been so involved in this project for years and years and years, trying to get this proposal put through in this regulation, and how things change in a year. It was a year ago that we were still talking to Minister Jeffrey and staff, and all of a sudden, a year later, not only have we got the reg in place that Minister Gravel signed, I think in December, signed off on it, and we also find out that on the front of the hunting regs, likely thanks to all kinds of work that Martin has done and Deb Stetson and her staff, that we've got falconry on the front of the cover. How great is that? How great is that? Talk about relevance. Talk about relevancy for hunting, another form of hunting. another form of legal hunting that people enjoy. So raptors will be collected either from nests or trapped on their first migration. You heard that this morning, the deputy said that. Policy includes a number of important principles. I'll cover just a couple of them. They to capture wild birds that are for recreational use only. Raptors are taken from the wild and they'll be identified by a permanent leg band. And there will be conditions regarding reporting and location of the collection that will apply. I'm sure there's a number more, but Martin, no problem, right? Yeah. Minister Jeffrey was able to do one really good thing. Doesn't mean that was the only thing she did, but one really good thing. And let me just back up a little bit and make sure you understand why I said that. 2011 was a strange year. It was an election year. We know that from history and from experience, when you have an election year in the province, there is a point in time when the government of the day doesn't want to do a thing, unless they think that 100% of Ontarians are going to support it. They are nervous. They're nervous about an adverse reaction. And of course, I think that when it comes to hunting, they're more nervous about an adverse reaction from some segments of the population that don't understand what we do and why we do it and how important it is to fish and wildlife management. But we were able to get something accomplished, and we were able to get an elk hunt accomplished. And we were able to have a first hunt in over 100 years. And we want to thank all the people involved in the program, including, again, Deb Stetzman. Deb, mentioning Deb's name a lot today, I'm telling you. I hope this isn't career limiting, Deb. I hesitate to compliment staff thinking, okay, how close are they to the OFAH? What's going on here? But no, Deb is doing a really good job, and I was glad that Doug recognized her today. So we had a draw. We had 4,422 applicants. They paid a fee of $16.95 each, so it resulted in a revenue for the SPA of $75,000. 70 elk seals were available. 42 groups of 4, 7 groups of 3, 7 groups of 2, and 14 individuals were successful. 65 out of 70 applicants claimed their seal. I have no idea why the other 5 didn't. I don't know whether anybody does. They may not have been able to find a place to hunt. They may have had some trouble getting permission. I don't know. We may never know the answer, or if somebody does, maybe they can share it with us later on. But nonetheless, we had 65 of those applicants come forward and claim their seal. Our numbers told us, and we may be out by a number here, but our numbers told us that 20 elk were harvested, 11 bulls and 9 cows, from 70 seals, of course, that were available. And of that split, there were supposed to be 24 bulls and 46 cows available for harvest. 18 of the 20 harvested elk were brought to voluntary check stations, and 64 of 65 mandatory reports were submitted. That was our up-to-date data. So I'm not sure what happened to the other report, but again, something so important as our first elk hunt. A mandatory report is a mandatory report. We need to have the data. We need to have the information, and I'm sure him and our staff, because of the limited number of tags and where they knew they were going, have followed up on that to find out why that didn't happen. The largest bull weighed 600 pounds, was about 5 years old. 75% of the elk harvested were taken from 2 WMUs where we had a lot of issues with the agricultural community. So that was a good thing. That was a good thing. And as I know I told you before, I visited and talked to farmers up there. I toured the areas in which there was some damage. I got beat up a little bit, but that's okay. That's part of the job. I wanted to see for myself what these elk were doing. And I'm pleased that there were numbers of elk taken out of those WMUs. Next steps, we need to have a complete analysis of the harvest and the reporting. We need to continue herd population monitoring and assessment and research. OFH is seeking a longer elk season for 2012, and I'm pleased to announce I'm hopeful and believe that shortly we will have an announcement that that season will be a 2-week season in September of this year, so you'll have a 1-week extension, and Angelo's number is so watch for that. We're hoping to be able to do some announcements and some good news things with our current minister and our deputy and staff, and so hopefully that will happen soon. We need to make sure that our population survey is planned, and I don't know, Cam, how that went for the early winter of 2012. New tracking collars will be used to put on additional elk, and of course the decision regarding the harvest is still pending. They need more information, so we know what the availability of tags will be. Will it be 70? Will it be 90? Will it be 120? We will let you know as soon as we know. Black bear management, there was a question about this morning, and we were expecting M&R district offices to begin that local stakeholder consultation regarding WMU-specific black bear population estimates, and to our understanding, that has not happened. So we need that to happen. We need to have dialogue and continue the dialogue with Wildlife Policy Section on a black bear camp license, which was an idea put forward by one of our clubs, and that is an ongoing discussion. Coyote biology. Lots of things in the news this past 2011 on coyotes. And we have been involved for obvious reasons. We want to make sure that coyote hunting is a manageable opportunity in the province of Ontario. We want to make sure that we're able to help the agricultural community, especially when they've got animals that are a problem. And they're, you know, from Jim McGee's expertise, there are problem animals that are always going to be a problem, and there are animals that are just on the property that aren't necessarily livestock killers. But we want to be able to help the community. We want to be able to support those community-based coyote hunting contests, because what they're doing is they're proactively going out, encouraging hunting of species that can be hunted, that it's sustainable, and will help the agricultural community. And proactively be working to help producers and trappers obtain new tools for predator control and management. Fisheries management. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really scratching the surface here when I talk about some of these things. So I apologize again to our staff, because I've said this before, I'm taking a year's worth of work and I'm condensing it into a couple of words. And it's not very comfortable sometimes. We're working with existing FMZs. We're involved in a Coaster Brook Trout Workshop. Put and grow take walleye management is an issue for us. Lake Ontario Trout and Salmon Symposium, which was organized by Andy Todd, the Lake Ontario manager last year. There's going to be one again this year. Lake Erie Crooked Management Advisory Group is ongoing. Halton Fisheries Management Plan, the recovery strategy for American eel we're involved in. We're involved in the Canada-Ontario Agreement on the Great Lakes Basin ecosystem. Water power and hydroelectric generating stations are an issue for us. So all those things are involved in fisheries management and things that our staff work on day in and day out. Advocacy, what is that? It's making sure we get our message out. It's making sure we do whatever we can to convince people that what we're asking them to do isn't an onerous task. It's making sure that we represent the interests of our members and what they need. The capacity for fishing and hunting, and this one, the capacity to own a firearm, because you're a safe and responsible firearms owner. And so I said before, and I said yesterday, and we've talked about it a lot, that we were disappointed that Candace Hepner's bill didn't go through in 2010. She spoke to us at our conference. But with the election of a majority Conservative government in May of 2011, the expectations of the firearms community increased. And I would dare to say that Canadians' expectations increased. This government in place in Ottawa didn't hide their agenda. They didn't tell you that they were thinking about it. They didn't not talk about it during the election campaign, so it should be no surprise to those that wanted to see the registry maintained that it's going to go away. It should be no surprise. So with the election of the government, it's going to happen. On October 25th, they introduced Bill C-19, which is an act to amend the Criminal Code and the Firearms Act, ending the long gun registry. And it will provide for the destruction of data associated with that system. And without giving you all the details, because I can't, your federation was heavily involved in dialogue at the federal level on why those records needed to be destroyed, and made sure it was part of the dialogue around the elimination of the registry. And I can't believe that some people are out there today saying, well, you didn't tell us you were going to destroy the records. You only told us you were going to eliminate the registry. What is the registry? It is records. It is data. And we know how sensitive that data is, and we know how easily it's breached and how tainted some of it is. We have the Auditor General's report. So the data has to go, and they've committed to doing that, and I know there's some court challenge issues around that, but I'm confident that those will be resolved. The bill received second reading in November, was sent to committee, back to the House. The government quickly dealt with the bill after the Christmas break. Angelo and I were down for the final vote in 2012, and after that third reading it was 159, and now it's going to the Senate, and I believe Greg is appearing before the Senate committee the last week in March I believe that's going to happen, and hopefully the Senate will deal with it quickly. It is a conservative majority Senate, so we're not expecting any hiccups, and we are expecting a big celebration. But keep in mind, and I'll remind you, even though I've switched the slide, and for those at home, licensing is intact. Safe storage of firearms and ammunition is in play. Nothing will change other than the registration and the data that governments have about your firearms, your firearms, your firearms, and my firearms. That's the only thing that changes. So I know that our people will be responsible. I'm going to keep my own data. I need to know what I have. I want to know that if I ever had an issue, I could tell my insurance company that it was this firearm with this number on it. I'm always going to keep my stuff stored safely. I have a grandchild. I know what that takes. So licensing will remain. This federation is committed to a sound licensing system, but the registry will be gone. Gotta go. The Algonquin land claim, it continues to occupy a great deal of time and attention. I'm actually a bit surprised that our Deputy O'Toole didn't get a question about the Algonquin land claim this morning. But you also know that we've got a panel of negotiators that are going to be here on Saturday, and I hope you fire away at them because they need to hear from us. They need to hear about how important public consultation is. Because in January of last year, there was a committee of external advisors. I've heard many people refer to this committee as the Committee of External Listeners. Not advisors, because they really haven't been able to advise on much. They are being told what's happening, but they're not giving anything with respect to information that they can advise on. And there are some very frustrated people who are good people around that table that could help. But in January, they were told an AIP would not be achieved in 2011. And we kind of assumed that because of the provincial election and a federal election. Negotiations on several chapters were continuing. A tentative final draft could soon be reached. And promised public workshops or public consultation was not likely to occur. So one of the promises and the commitments of both governments, the federal and provincial government involved in this negotiation, was that public consultation would occur. And yet a committee in January was told, I don't think it's going to happen. So we wrote the Provincial Minister of Aboriginal Affairs. The staff denied those rumors and that comment and maintained that the consultation process would be followed. But we received a letter in July, informed the OFH that once an AIP is reached and agreed on by all three parties, only then would the public be engaged. Well, you know, I've heard this saying, and you've heard this before. You know, when the horse is out of the barn, what are you going to do? Close the door and say goodbye. That's what this is. That's what this says to me. They're already going to do the deal. You're not going to know what's going to happen. You're not going to have any input. You're not going to know what's going to happen to your Crown land camp in the middle of a 400-acre parcel of land because the Crown's not going to own it anymore. What's going to happen to you? Are you going to be given a choice? Are you going to be able to move to another LUP? Are you going to be able to sell your camp to your new landlord? Are you going to be able to continue to hunt that property? I don't know. Those are questions that need to be answered. We wrote expressing our dissatisfaction over the process in the absence of that public consultation. And we have a commitment from the federal minister that he will not sign an AIP until the federal government sees open and honest public consultation on this land claim. The province is now focused on achieving an AIP sometime in 2012. I would predict hopefully in the next 3 months, or hopefully if they have public consultation prior to that, hopefully if they don't, not, but I'm thinking in the next 3 months they'll likely have some AIP done. In February, it was officially reaffirmed that the province had changed their timeline and that full consultation would take place. So we're not quite sure if they're still there yet. We are hopeful that they are, and the OFH is going to start to consult with other stakeholders, member organizations, people with a vested interest in this land claim, we're going to start doing our private consultation and start to have more dialogue with our provincial and federal government counterparts on public consultation. And I'm so pleased that I mentioned the other day about Craig joining us, and I'm so pleased that Craig is on staff and helping with this project. He brings a significant amount of experience to the table on Native affairs issues, and Craig, we're glad you're here. The Ontario government continues to remind the federal government on this issue that natural resources are a provincial jurisdiction, but this ignores the fact that the federal minister and the chief federal negotiator, whom will be here on Saturday, need to sign the deal. And again, they've said they won't sign it if there's not public consultation. So I'm expected that the pace of negotiations are pretty hot and heavy right now. Now, just before I move on to this, I will add that we have had good meetings with the Algonquins. We have met face-to-face with the Algonquins, just like we've met with other Native communities at Cape Croker and Six Nations. We started doing that a number of years ago. We need to have dialogue with them. They are resource users. They have protection under Sparrow, so we need to dialogue with them. And one thing that I found that's encouraging for me is that I've been told by Mr. Potts that they understand that as they negotiate this treaty, they're concerned about their neighbors' needs for natural resources within the land claim. They're concerned about that. They understand. So I pointed out to Mr. Potts, okay, so as long as the neighbor knows that if I come home one day and he puts up a fence without telling me, I'm going to be pissed off. So we're hoping that dialogue is productive and that it's open and honest, and we are having information shared. And I believe that to be the case. National Fish and Wildlife Advisory Panel is one of those ideas of your federation. We're only one of two stakeholders that were consulted on the creation of the Fish and Wildlife Panel, announced by the Prime Minister, and we weren't expecting the Prime Minister to announce this. This was something we took to the federal government a couple of years ago, and lo and behold, he took it on as one of his campaign promises. So we met with the Director General, the Canadian Wildlife Service, gave them our input, and we're hopeful that the Prime Minister will announce this during the National Fish and Wildlife Conservation Congress in May. And that leads me to the Congress, and I know Greg's going to speak to the conference a little bit this afternoon, but I do want to tell you that the planning has been great. We've got people like Eric Boysen on the panel, or on the committee, Jamie Fortune from Ducks Unlimited, who I think is going to be here on Saturday night. We've got a commitment from our provincial government to be involved, as you've heard the deputy talk. We've got a role for our current Minister of Natural Resources, Michael Gravel, to play in the Congress. And we've got hundreds of fish and wildlife biologists, scientists, conservationists, et cetera, all going to participate. I'm expecting about 500 to 600 people that will participate in this, maybe more. I'm hoping it's 900, but it's going to be a great opportunity for your federation to communicate with people internationally about the importance of the future of fishing and hunting, natural resources policy, the need for U.S.-Canada cooperation in fish and wildlife management, the creation of this National Fish and Wildlife Advisory Panel, and, very important, the economic and social importance of natural resources to Canadians. All those things are important. So you're going to get an update from Greg, and again, I can tell you that, 15 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to do this. We wouldn't have the support from partners that we have today. We wouldn't have that community within the fishing and hunting community that we have today. And I'm proud of that. And so this is what happens. People come to the table, they want to be involved, they know the relevancy of such a Congress. They know that if we roll out with the material that we create as a result of experts sitting down and having dialogue on these issues, we can make a difference. We can influence government. We can advocate for things that are important to people who fish and hunt. We can advocate for resources that M&R staff need to do their jobs properly. And we can advocate for continued stewardship, which provides leverage, and you've heard that term used today. So it's going to be a great event. There was an act delivered in 2009 by MP Rick Norlock. It was a bill to establish a National Hunting, Trapping, and Fishing Heritage Day, but the bill died because Parliament was dissolved. And we've got a new bill. It's the same bill. It's called C-261. Mr. Norlock has reintroduced the bill. He's from Northumberland, Quinte West, a rural riding. And they are expected to have second reading in the spring of this year, and we're expecting that bill to receive royal assent sometime this fall. We have a majority government. Even though this is a private member's bill, we have a majority government, and it should receive royal assent this fall. Department of Fisheries and Oceans, we've had great working relationship with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. And I know that there was a reference today. I just want to make sure I get the former title right, because it's a long title. But is Bob Lamb still here? Where's Bob? Just within the hall. Well, when he tell him, give me a wave when he comes back. I'll just keep moving on. We have a good relationship with our DFO in Ottawa. We talk about things like Great Lakes water quality, sea lamprey control, national invasive species proposal we've had on the table for a number of years, federal regulation on Asian carp, which I heard a question from a member today. All those things are important to us, and we have exceptional dialogue. And much of it is to do with Bob Lamb. There's Bob coming back. Did you get your coffee? So Bob was, and I do say was, the Regional Director General, Central and Arctic Region, Fisheries and Oceans Canada. And you recognize Bob from past conferences, and he's a really good friend of the Federation. And the best news about me recognizing Bob, and I know the Deputy talked about the Invasive Species Center and the invasive species work that we all want to do, is Bob is the new Executive Director of the Invasive Species Center. So as reluctant as the province is to make an announcement, Bob, I've just done it. And we didn't need to open. But no, Bob is going to do a great job. I'm glad that he wasn't retired too long to be able to take on this role. He knows what a great job OFH does. He knows how important our program is and what we have vested in that program. So I feel very safe and secure with Bob at the helm of the Invasive Species Center for Ontario. So thank you, Bob. Renewable energy, of course, we're involved in discussions about renewable energy. Scott Petrie has really been a significant player again in this one, and wind power development in particular, of course, is a concern. We've received many calls expressing concern of the potential negative impact on fish and wildlife. We're concerned about questions raised about offshore wind development. We're concerned about Crown land use application process, which it should incorporate geographic limitations on the number, the proximity, the orientation of wind turbines. We want to make sure there's no cumulative effects. So we're involved in that. Municipal discharge and Sunday gun hunting. You heard our deputy talk this morning about some municipalities that will be coming online soon. I can tell you that, in my opinion, these will come on quickly. The minister will make an announcement shortly on Township of Severn, Loyalist, Brockton, and Macker, all approved Sunday gun hunting. We continue to work on this, and that map that we used to see with some colors that were all shaded and we were working on and some that were pending and filled in is all becoming one color. And all thanks to an initiative of your federation to find the timing, the appropriate timing to speak to a minister that was willing to listen to us, and that was David Ramsey. So we have another number of municipalities that are looking to come on side, and I know enforcement officers here are nodding their head, yep, good, well now we know that on that line it is, and this line it isn't, now it's going to be all the same, we know how we can enforce. It makes it easier. We've got Brant County, Southwest Oxford, Wellesley, Central Elgin, Beckwith, Township of Southwest Oxford, Town of West Elgin, Brook, Alvinston. They're all expected to have a vote this year on Sunday gun hunting. So we're continuing to paint that color, one color, in Southern Ontario, and that's a good thing. Think about the opportunities we enjoy because of that one decision. Think about the opportunities we're able to expand on because a minister of the day listen to us about the relevancy of allowing us to choose the pastime we choose on Sunday. Because my day of rest might be being in the field with a family member. So, good for David Ramsey. County of Brant continued to make changes to their discharge bylaw. It wasn't perfect, but we're happy with the wording. We can accept it. Sarnia is reviewing their comments before proceeding to a new discharge bylaw, so we're involved in that. The Township of Penetanguishene is also doing some work on their discharge bylaw, and it looks like we've been able to convince them to reduce their buffer zone for discharge. This isn't in the whitetail deer section because this was more advocacy than anything else, but it is whitetail deer hunting. And Glenn Rivard and the Northern Sportsman Alliance did a significant amount of work on this in Northern Ontario to convince the City of Thunder Bay to expand bow hunting season within the city limits. And you remember what we're dealing with in Ontario. We're dealing with expanded municipalities. So you've had a municipality that was this big 10 years ago, and now it encapsulates this much room, which takes in some rural property that would have been hunted in the past. So as a result of the hard work of our members and our board member, Glenn Rivard, and others in Northern Ontario, in Thunder Bay, they've set up an opportunity to expand a bow hunting season within the city limits. And that's good news, because they've got problems with car-deer collisions. They got way too many white-tailed deer. We want to be able to use it as a management tool. And lo and behold, while they were making that decision, the town of Kenora was doing a pilot project on the very same thing. So that's good news. Land use management and access. And forest management has always been an integral part of our program, and during 2011 we submitted many responses to EBR postings, and again I want to make sure that you look at all the detail in here on forest management and access in our annual report. I'll cover a few of them. Mazenal Lanark Forest, we focused on the lack of recognition for hunting and fishing. And as a result, we were able to get incorporated in the FMP a socioeconomic analysis for big game hunting activities. That is good. We're concerned with road management objectives and the loss of accessibility. And I know this is where Andy was going today, and I know this is where Mr. Boudreau was going today with his question to our deputy. We're creating roads, public roads with public money, and we're not allowed to access them. And it's not about us against the tourism industry. I don't believe that's the case. It's about reasonable opportunity for access to fishing and hunting areas where we can help with wildlife management. We can have that access to be able to fulfill our needs for fishing and hunting. That's what it's all about. So we're concerned about those things. The Martel Forest, the rationale, criteria, and cost-benefit analysis for establishing moose emphasis areas was the focus of our response on this one. Strawberry Island, we submitted comments and recommendations regarding an EBR posting for the park's designation. The focus was on loss of socioeconomic and cultural benefits associated with hunting. This land was was purchased by Nature Conservancy in 2002. And so there was hunting there prior to that for 80 years. We want to make sure that continues. The Melachthon Quarry, the results of that was that M&R and MOE jointly brought forward a regulation that will make the Highland companies who are working in that quarry area subject to full requirements of the Environmental Assessment Act. Our wildlife research grants, fish and wildlife research grants, you're going to see some of that stuff over the next couple of nights. We have our OFH Toronto Sportsman Show Research Award for Fisheries. We have our OFH Zone G Wildlife Research Grant. We have our Oakville and District Rod and Gun Conservation Research Grant, and we have our 2011 winners. You'll see them again over the next couple of nights. Jeff Muirhead from University of Waterloo for Conservation, Stephen Markovitz for Fisheries out of the University of Western Ontario, and Wildlife Award winner Philip Wilson from Trent University. And those provided much needed funds for those people to continue their studies. And we had a number of projects. I'm going to slip through some of these fairly quickly here, but they are in the book. I want to pick up a little bit of time. But in particular, provincially, we gave $12,000 to the Quetico Foundation to study changes in moose habitat and activity in Quetico Provincial Park and northern Minnesota. And we also helped out Scott Petry's organization to do some studies on long-tailed ducks and overwintering. The zones have their own pot of money that they're able to fund projects within their zones, and many of them did that over the course of this past year. Some helped Quetico with the moose program out of Zone A. Zone B gave some money to the North Shore Steelhead Association to do some work at the mouth of the Current River in the city of Thunder Bay. Zone E spent some money within Darlington Waterfowl Hunt to make it more safe and provide hunting opportunities. Zone C did some work on a walleye rehabilitation project. Zone G, $3,000 to Long Point Waterfowl, again for that long-tailed duck study of overwintering. Zone H did $1,000 to the Saugeen River Fish Ladder project. And that was undertaken by our M&R. Ringwood. So you heard our deputy commit to the importance of fish culture. And you know there's been a debate for a number of years about where fish culture was going in the province. In fact, as much as I can praise David Ramsey for some of the really good decisions he made as minister, the one that troubled me the most that he struggled with was what was going to happen with fish culture. And he was of the opinion that he needed to recover some costs or save some costs, and he was at one point in time considering closing 2 hatcheries. And think about when I talk about this, how we've come full circle again. 2 hatcheries, Normandale and Ringwood. One at the start, maybe another one, and we didn't know if that was going to happen. We had some discussions with the minister at the time and said, you know what, we need to get our act together here on fish culture, and we're concerned that once you start, you're not going to stop. And fish culture is a core program in our opinion. So you know what, let us enter into an agreement in Ringwood. Let us take it over for 5 years. Let us look for volunteers. Let us leverage that volunteer work to operate the hatchery. And we'll commit to delivering the Chinook program. And you know what that did? That bought us some time. It bought us some time to continue to talk about fish culture. We did some great work in our magazine talking about all the fish culture stations and making sure that our members understood the value of fish culture. We continued to work with our current minister then, Donna Cansfield, after David Ramsey, to talk about fish culture. And we had a hatchery rebuilt in the north all of a sudden and retrofitted, and all of a sudden there was a decision made to go ahead and rebuild Normandale, and you heard our deputy minister talk about that today. And so lo and behold, we've got fish culture now that, in my opinion, is again considered a core program of our Ministry of Natural Resources. So how we come full circle as a result of one decision. So we didn't need to stay in Ringwood, and the rebuilding of Normandale allowed them to move the Chinook program there. And it's also the Atlantic Salmon Facility. So we fulfilled our obligations. We successfully raised Lake Ontario's Chinook salmon for 5 years. We had great volunteers, including the Metro East anglers. Last year, about 580,000 Chinook went in between St. Catharines and Wellington to Lake Ontario. And the Metro East are still in the facility. They've got a 13-month agreement. They're mostly raising coho. I think they're raising a few rainbow, and we wish them the best of luck because they wanted to have a little facility of their own that they could operate, so good for them. Hunter education, I'll just quickly show you the numbers because we're still on this increase, and we're one of the only jurisdictions in North America with an increase in hunter education, and we should be proud of that. 18,505, and it was mentioned yesterday in our annual meeting, were trained in safe, responsible hunter education, firearms safety over the course of 2011. And that's a good thing. And I do mean that other jurisdictions are falling, but Ontario continues to increase, and we have a great partnership with M&R. Since the program was introduced in 1960, we've trained over 1 million hunters to think safety first. There wasn't any new instructor training in 2011, but M&R is now selecting individuals who will be trained for Toronto, Trenton, Belleville, and Cornwall because we have some need in those areas. And we're in the second year of a 4-year MOU to deliver hunter education and the wild turkey hunter education program. We had a 20th annual OFH Hunter Education Conference, and at that conference in Kitchener, Harold Nichol from Kenora was inducted into the Ontario Hunter Education Hall of Fame posthumously. We still have a Young Hunter Education Scholarship Program, and this was something started by Thomas Pigeon, and he started it, but he felt that he couldn't continue to manage it and deliver it, and he said, would the OFH like it? And I said, yes, we would. So since its inception, we have 544 applicants, and these are applicants whose families can't afford to pay for hunter education for a young person who wants to hunt. So how more appropriate than that? We review the applications, we have some criteria, and so we put them to the test, and the result is 363 applicants have finished their course, and we've paid hunter ed instructors out of the program funds to deliver the program. And thank you to them at a much reduced rate than the hunter ed instructors might normally charge to do that. Some don't charge us anything. We had some new curriculum that was approved for 2011, and that paved the way for the long-awaited Wild Turkey Home Study DVD, which we launched in April. And we talked about this for a long time. Cam, you and Deb and I had some discussions about this, even an internet course, and this is going back, way back. It's far too long for me to remember. But it's here. So over the course of 2011, we had 7,200 plus new turkey hunters who actually took the face-to-face course, and we had 3,100 plus DVDs purchased, and that continues still to be the trend. So overall, 10,000 plus new turkey hunters in the province. Youth hunting. In 2011, we began to work with Elgin, Perth, and Middlesex Stewardship Councils to deliver a youth hunting program across Ontario. They developed an awesome program. Tested out, actually had Minister Donna Cansfield visit and participate in one of the events. So we are now looking for clubs, working with clubs. Randy Jennings could be of some help to you, Dave Pind, to give you an idea on how we can get you started. But it's a great opportunity, again, to introduce young people to hunting and help us remain relevant. Wild Turkey Registry, we still operate the registry. It's a way for you to be recognized for harvesting that terrific bird over the course of a year. And we had 138 entries in 2011. And family fishing weekend events, I won't delve into this because our deputy minister raised it, but these are important events. These are license-free events. Many of our clubs and organizations organize events around these weekends and week, which is license-free, so it affords us the opportunity to introduce people to fishing. And introducing people to fishing, boy, there's some nice segues in this presentation this year, isn't there? Is tackle share. How do we introduce people to fishing if they don't have equipment? We loan it to them. We started it 11 years ago, and somebody said to me at the time, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. People aren't going to return their rods and reels. But they do. It does work. Anglers are honest. Even if they're just becoming anglers, they're honest. But the industry was great on this. You can see all the support we've got for this. And it's like a library. You go into a place that is a tackle share location, you say, I want to borrow a rod and reel. We give them a tackle pack. They sign their name, they leave, they take it for the day or two, and they bring it back and check it back in again. And the people at those tackle share locations service them. They make sure new line is on, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a great program. And in 2011, Ontario Power Generation signed on as a lead sponsor, and that allowed us to get out and do a traveling program across the province. And so we did that over the course of last summer. Angler Awards. Still have a great program of an Angler Award program which promotes recreational fishing. Somebody here in the crowd told me they just got their certificate for a fish that they sent in over the course of the last year. It gives us an opportunity to get some profile, and it showcases online thousands of people who have made entries, and you need to visit the site. And many of, I don't know if Doug Reynolds is still in the room, but there's Doug, many tourist operators use this program. They encourage their guests to participate and to key into the program, so we're really pleased with that. Provincial Get Outdoors program and leadership camp, boy, I'm proud of that. If you've seen the kids here, you will see them here, and you can imagine, you're going to see all kinds of them running around here with this on this weekend. You won't miss them. Believe me, you won't miss them. But we do have a leadership camp. Talk about the conference, and we have a 4-day program that I believe is the envy of every organization like OFAH, because it combines all those things that are important to us that are all relevant: leadership, team building, conservation education, outdoor exploration, fishing, target shooting, archery, all those things. Parents signing up their kids to do target shooting with .22s. That's okay. What's wrong with that? I did that as a kid. It's still relevant today. It's safe. We have responsible volunteers and staff looking after them. Why not? Our summer leadership camp has, in 10 years, we have 180 youth a year and a waiting list now. And think about when we go way back to the years we used to use. Some people in here will remember the Junior Conservation School in Dorset. I only remember the tail end of that because we were really struggling funding it, and we had to end that. But we've been able to maintain this with an unbelievable program, great volunteers, and the ability the OFH has to market its programs, such as this. So we have 180 youth participating, and think about 10 years ago, we only had 30. And we still have a waiting list. You're going to hear a little more about Camp Ramova in Huntsville because they're going to be given an award this weekend for their work and their efforts in allowing us to use the facility. And, of course, the conference leadership camp. We started that about 9 years ago. And it's also great. We're seeing 80 to 90 kids around the conference. They participate. And if anybody here knows Alicia Caldwell is a prime example of a graduate of our Get Outdoors program. What more can I say? She's on staff at the OFAH. Women's Outdoor Weekend events. For 17 years we've been doing this type of event. It was held again near Minden. We had over 100 participants, and actually this year we're having a reunion in Peterborough at the Heritage Center for women that want to participate who have attended the program over the last 17 years, so that will be fun. Fun for Angela. I'm not going to be there, of course. I'm not going to invite me back. OFH Ontario Record Fish Registry, again, we want to thank our friends at Advanced Taxidermy. You see some of their work here, but they are the people that craft the replicas for the registry. The registry is housed in the Heritage Centre. So when you come to Peterborough, and I should ask, how many people have actually been through the Heritage Centre in this room? How many people have been through? Great. So for those that haven't been through, you've got to make a trip. You've got to come down. This registry is housed in the Heritage Centre, so it's easy to see. We have a new record, which is a yellow perch in 2011, 2.45 pounds. So that's a big yellow perch. And that likely will be in the registry in a few months. And so that nicely segues into the Heritage Centre. And since the opening in April of 2010, we have been extremely busy. Aside from daily tours and special groups, we also had a summer speaker series last year, and we had some neighborhood nights where we sort of split the city of Peterborough up into 4 or 5 areas, and we invited neighborhoods to bring their families and come, and it was a really a big success. And we had 2 significant contributions this year, one from a really good friend of mine, Andy Clements, who is retired, who is a retired school teacher, but also a businessman, who was going to contribute his world-class decoy and antique lure collection. And he decided to do it a little earlier than he wanted to. He wanted to do some before he retired. He's going to stretch that over into Angelo's tenure, so he'll do some after I retire. But this collection alone is worth about $500,000. And so for those that haven't been there, that are interested, that are used to seeing that tackle in Granddad's tackle box, you've got to come in and see this collection because it's amazing. And so Andy started that donation. We also received another generous donation from life member, the late Harold McCallum, who passed away a couple of weeks after he made a contribution. And that was $100,000. We had some Get Outdoors summer day camps at the Heritage Centre this past year in Peterborough. We had 60 young people participate, and we're going to do that again this year. All in all in 2011, and I'll just talk about student registration. So these are classrooms. These aren't people that also attend with class or students. These aren't parents that attend. These don't include teachers. These don't include drop-ins. These don't include other events. Just students who are registered to go through the program that we have, the curriculum program. Almost 2,000 students visited the center last year and were put through their paces with curriculum approved and certified by the Ontario Board of Education. Huge, huge. And teachers have told us that when they bring their students to the facility, they get more out of 6 hours in the facility than they can do in 2 weeks in a classroom setting. So it's amazing, and it's amazing to watch the kids. And I know, is Dawn McVitie in the room? Dawn? Oh yeah, there's Dawn. Stand up, Dawn. Dawn's a life member, and Dawn contributed many of the specimens within the facility. All the mounts were paid for by Dawn. He's still helping us out. And we've encouraged Dawn to come in and hide somewhere in a corner and watch one of these classrooms in action. And I know that Dawn will enjoy it. So thank you, Dawn. Yep. There you see a picture of the amphitheater, and we're able to host a couple of professional development days for teachers. We also were putting the finishing touches on a couple of things in the basement, of which Angelo's really been a big part of over the last few months, in getting the Stoger airgun range and the Excalibur archery range for kids up and running in the Heritage Centre. And I feel a little competition coming on. I think there's going to be some kind of a challenge that's going to be underway for some of our conservation officers in the Peterborough area. I'm just giving you a heads up that you're likely going to get a memo. We're going to get you over, and maybe I'll be invited and maybe I won't. But there will likely be a little challenge on the archery range and the airgun range. And the airgun range is great, and I did take one of the first shots in the airgun range. So, our Shimano Pond is still running in Peterborough, and you would think that when you live in Peterborough you have enough water, why would you need a pond? But it's used almost every day in the summer by people who are physically challenged, who don't have access that you might think they will, and so we're very proud of that. And there's Angelo. He loves to give things away, so you guys are going to be laughing. He's giving away a truck and a boat there as part of our lottery draw. So that brings us into membership and fundraising. Bear with me because I'm losing my voice. So we have great prizes in our lottery, over $300,000 in total, or almost $300,000, and our tickets are still the same price as they were when I started working on the lottery when I joined the Federation in fundraising. And all of our clubs who sell books of tickets when they go to malls, and you've seen some of the clubs recognized last night during the awards presentations, they get $6 back from every book of tickets sold, and they spend that in their community on fish and wildlife projects. And they have to give us a list of their projects. We have to tell the Lottery Corporation where all that money goes. We're accountable like anybody else. And so they spend that money within their community. I'm not going to go over these prizes. I apologize to our sponsors, but the prize list is incredible. The first 5 prizes alone feature trucks, caravans, boats, motors from Yamaha, Dodge, etc., etc. And there's the balance of the top 10. And we have a great lottery print this year, and that's a bonus. When you sell 5 books of tickets, you have to give us an extra $10 so we can give you the print. But that print, in my opinion, is absolutely free, and it's a great print of a hunt camp, and this is actually a hunt camp that one of our members, or one of our staff members owns. And so we used it as a backdrop, and the artist said, great, I can do something with that, and so it's a really great print, and I know it'll be popular. And we talked about the clubs involved. I'm going to quickly move through this, and I apologize to them, but you know the clubs that were recognized last night. They're featured there, and there's all the clubs that sold 100 books of tickets or more. If you need some help or you need some advice, please call head office. If you want to know how you do it in a mall, what to look for, you know, how you're going to get out there and generate some interest for your club and raise some money, we'll help you. Membership growth. Few membership organizations can talk about the growth and the retention that we have, and retention is important. Keep in mind, retention is important. Not everybody is going to join an organization. We get that. We understand that. But you got to keep your numbers, and retention is the biggest part of that. Some organizations will have a drop-off of 50% of their membership in a year. 50% in a year. People come on, people go off. People come on, people go off. We have the highest retention rate in the industry, and we're still making gains. So we had almost a record of 85,000 in November. We're still working on that. We've got a solid team effort of OFAH on campaigns and programs. We have a record number of membership offers because we need to be competitive. There is competition out there. We recognize that. And Robert Pye does a good job in delivering most of those services with the help of many other people in the office. And we have monthly giving. And monthly giving raises about $365,000 a year. It's convenient. It's automatic. We just need your information. And if you want to give me a piece of paper at the end of the day with your information on, I will be pleased to handle it personally before March 30th if you're not a monthly giver. And life members, just like Don McVitie and many others in the room here today that are recognized as being life members, it increased to 533 in 2011, so many people are still wanting to be life members. So that's a good thing. And club growth, we have 675 member clubs in the province of Ontario, right from the north to the south, from the east to the west. And lots of clubs want to be involved in the Federation. They believe in the advocacy and the role the organization has and how we can be of help. And they want that special insurance coverage we can provide them. And the member benefits continue at $3 million a year for OFAH members for member insurance. And then we have club options that are available, and Brian McRae is involved in that, and Kim Staples is going to be here later on this weekend. You can speak to her. And some of the member benefits come from our partners, like BrokerLink, who are here today. And thousands of members take advantage of great insurance rates on home, auto, ATV needs during the year. And in 2011, our BrokerLink, the BrokerLink staff did 2 draws to give away an ATV and a Lund package to 2 lucky OFH members who got quotes on policies. They're also launching a Fish and Wildlife Conservation internship, which will be, I think it's about 4.5 to 5 months, for a position for somebody to gain work experience at OFAH in the fish and wildlife field. So how great is that? How great is that for a corporate partner to really get it, to understand that that's important? So we're looking forward to launching that. MasterCard, $55,000 a year we get from MasterCard, from revenue generation from you using your card. I know that Judy knows I'm winding down because she asked me the other day, did you lose your MasterCard? I said, what do you mean did I lose my card? Because I'm not expensing as much because somebody else is doing that, and I'm not doing as much over the last few months. But no, I didn't use my card, and I will use my OFH card for a long, long time. AIL still contributes to our program, and you'll see AIL this weekend be recognized with an award, and we'll be presenting checks. Bank of Montreal will be presenting a check this weekend too. Mark's Work Warehouse, right across Canada, we're in the top 30 of their affinity partners. Every time you go into Mark's and you show your card, your Mark's affinity card that we provide to our members, you get 10% off regular priced items, and we get a little bit of a kickback. And the brick, many members use the brick for discounts on quality merchandise. That's helpful. Manulife, I'm going to need Manulife after March. Not going to be covered under the OFH policy, so I'm going to have to talk to Manulife about some coverage. And TSC, great program that we've got going with TSC. We have an expansion of TSC stores and the partnership. It will give a percentage of member purchases back to OFH again. So really, really great program. Continues to offer members a 15% discount on many products, and the website will have monthly specials for members. And there's another program that's going to be launching this year, and it's UPS. And they're in the building. You need to speak to those representatives. But that's going to be another great program with similar returns, but that's a 2012 thing that Angela will talk about this time next year. So sustaining members, there's a list of our corporate partners. I can't go through them all, but they're extensive. And merchandise sales, we offer great discounts on product, as you know. Our merchandise sales over the last couple of years has been down, partly to do, I think, with the economy, partly to do with some competition, which is fine. We're in competition. We get that. And so there's going to be a whole review of how we handle merchandise, how we sell it, how we get it to our members in the line of products. And our calendar and card program, another way of raising money. 14,000 calendars were sold or contributed to over the past year. 26,000 Christmas cards sold. We give a charitable receipt for the calendar donation. We can do that. And so the average donation spread out over the 14,000 was $18.19. And the card program, generated 21,000. And again, the card program, when I talk about relevancy, every time you send a Christmas card to somebody, they see the OFH logo. They get the fish and wildlife message. That helps us maintain relevancy in many homes across Ontario. So I know we can't compete with our corporate partner Walmart for 3 dozen cards for $4.99. So buy some from Walmart, but buy some from OFAH and use those for special people in your life who understand. We have a great communication strategy right now, likely the best in the industry. I believe we're excellent in communicating because we have all the tools and the people necessary. Much of it under the guidance of Leslie Goodwin, but also with the magazine side with John Kerr, Jeff Helsden, who's here, who's a writer for the magazine. So we're very proud of what we're able to do. There's the main vehicle of communicating to members is the hotline, which a number of years ago increased from 8 pages to 16 pages. And I know Leslie sometimes struggles over the course of 10 issues to get that done in a timely fashion, and we want timely information in there. If something happens and the deadline is today, and we knew something happened yesterday, we need it in before we go to print. So sometimes we're scrambling. There's a number of things we do in the way we communicate. We have web service. We maintain 14 websites. We're now on Facebook and Twitter. How many people here are on Facebook and Twitter? Oh, there's some. There's some. It's likely not the Facebook and Twitter crowd, but that leads me to, again, relevancy. Because the crowd that is there are younger than Mike. And those are the people we want to make sure understand what relevancy is with respect to fishing and hunting. They want to do this all day. They want to tell people they're in the field. I'll tell you somebody who uses Facebook a lot is Robert Pye. You look at Robert's site and he goes on Facebook and he says that I'm in the field with my kids today. I'm on my property hunting deer. I just shot a huge turkey on opening morning. He uses it all the time and he's got lots of followers, and we need to do that more. So staff were trying to get me to do a few things on Facebook, and I'm just too old for that. I couldn't get involved in that. But I know that Angela's going to be doing a few things that are going to be relevant to Facebook and Twitter. Aren't you, Ange? There now. We host 6 zone websites. We hope the other 3 will come on. And many of the ways in which we communicate are advertising, internet web pages, news releases, media relations. You know all of them. You see them all day in and day out, including PSAs. So many ways to communicate. Ontario Out of Doors, we had another very successful year, which is the OFH-owned magazine. We will continue to work on our province-wide branding, which is this is Ontario Out of Doors country. We've done billboard campaigns, mailings, and people are telling us last year that they've seen the signs. They drive into the city of Peterborough and it says, Peterborough, this is Ontario Out of Doors country. So we've really had good response to that. There's the look of our new look website with 2.1 million visits. We've got 7,700 likes on Facebook. What's a like? 2,400 followers, 63,200 video views on YouTube. So very active, very active. And television. 19th season, we have a new host. Cam left, fair to say, because I've told Cam unexpectedly, but Cam had an opportunity to go to the industry and wanted to work for the industry and actually went to one of our really good industry partners in Pure Fishing. And so we looked for a new host, and we found a great one in Mike Miller. Mike was involved in the Fishing Canada show, their radio program. Mike is an avid angler and hunter, and he's doing a great job, and you'll see Mike here this weekend. I think he's speaking down at the Sportsman Show. You know the stations we're on right across the global network, right across the country. And we've brought some new sponsors to the table as a result of Mike's salesmanship. He's really good with partners. He understands what people need when they're involved in TV and radio, of course. So we got Canadian Tire as a new one. We got Lucky Strike. And Mike's continuing to deliver really good messages. And leads me to radio. And I think Tom Otto is here somewhere. Is Tom in the room? Where? Stand up, Tom. So the guy you don't see but you hear is right there, Tom Otto. Tom? And Tom's doing a great job with the radio program. He's going to be doing some taping here while he's here. We added a station in Sudbury. Doug Oxon, you're going to have to get up a little earlier. 9 o'clock is too late. Doug, actually, you're right. You can listen to it online anytime. You can actually do that. I sometimes will go on my computer and listen to it at 11 o'clock out of Owen Sound. But you can also listen to it anytime just by downloading a podcast and listening to it 2 weeks later on a show. So please do that because we've had really great value. We had a great interview with Minister Gravel a week or so ago. And he really, really did a good job. I was excited for him being introduced to our audience and excited for us that we've got a minister who can speak about the issues eloquently enough. And that's all I'm going to say. But, you know, guy from the north, it's really, really good to hear. You heard our financial report yesterday. Frank Wick gave our report, our treasurer. We ended up a little bit in the hole last year. I'm not going to try and explain that because I think Frank did it. But I want to talk to you a little bit. Of course, you can see that we've had so many great years of profitability. And that included the fact that we were still writing down some assets. And unlike you or me, when I have my house and I spent $300,000 on it, and 10 years later I think of my house as being worth $380,000. But auditors do it differently for organizations like OFAH. So we build the Heritage Center. We spend $2 million it is in its final outcome of that building. And then we start to tell ourselves that it's worth less each year. But that's what we have to do. And so that amount shows up on the books. So when we start to write it down over 20 years, $100,000 in write-down automatically hits your bottom line. The other thing we don't talk about is assets as much as we should. Once the Heritage Center is completely written down on paper, the auditors value it at this. But we know that's not true. We know that's not true. So I would estimate that OFAH right now has likely got assets in land and property in the area of $6 to $7 million. And you've heard Frank talk about the financial assets of the OFAH in the amount of about $6 million. So we're very healthy. The organization is very healthy financially. We're doing a good job managing the Federation for the members, and that's what we're supposed to do. Yep, we spend the money where we should. And I'll remind you one more thing. Our auditors say you're not supposed to keep all this money. You're supposed to reinvest it. So it's not about building a big bankroll. It's about finding the appropriate places to spend the money where it's necessary to spend it to make sure that we reinvest in members' needs and where the organization needs to go. So I get to end for the last time, and Angelo will be up here next year.